And we are live. This is Brian Friedman showing the view from the top, and we are live for a fantastic show we've got today. People are coming in from all over the world. I can see Ray Abbott's come in. We've got Rob Krelling. Hi to Marie Fair, to Simona Cruch from Romania. People are coming in from all over the world, which is so exciting to see you all today. We've got an amazing show today when we're going to be talking about global talent mobility, making the dream a reality. So this is a really important subject. We all talk about talent mobility, but what does it mean? How can we actually make mobility more than just about visas and tax, but how can we make mobility really strategic? So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and I'm super excited. We've got Azibia Agomo and we've got Magdalena Jennings from Equinix, and they are doing some very exciting things. So everybody, if you want to learn about global talent mobility, you want to hear what Equinix is doing, then this is the show for you. I said we've got some really important stuff to talk about today. But please join in the conversation, write in the comments box, tell us who you are, where you are, tell us what's going on in your world. We're really excited to hear what is going on in your world, but also your comments as we get into the conversation about this really important subject. Now, we have loads of CPE credits for you as well. So if you want your CPE credits, you can get them from ERC, you can get them from SHRM, you can get them from HRCI. So many thanks to all our good friends at ERC for providing us with those GMS and CRP credits, to our friends at Rocket Mortgage for providing us with the HRCI and the SHRM credits. You know, I know a lot of you really do want those credits, so they are there and you can get them. By the way, one of the things we're doing now is not only is the show going live, well, now obviously, but we're also showing it again for those of you out in the Asia Pacific region. So we'll be doing what we call a recast, and that will be showing it again, and that will be at 4 p.m. Sydney time, and whatever that is out in the rest of the Asia region. So if you want to watch the recast, then it's out there. If you've got friends who couldn't make it today but would maybe want to watch the recast because they're in that region, then please do send them a link or tell them about it. So that recast will be available tomorrow. Next week, we've got a really important subject. We're going to be talking about how to measure return on investment in global mobility, which is such an important subject to talk about. Meanwhile, what we're going to do now is we're going to tell you about what's been going on in the wonderful world of global mobility. So let's run a video and let's talk about all the latest breaking news that's happened in the last 7 days in this wonderful world of global mobility. Okay, so that's all our breaking news. So congratulations to everybody who has moved job. Congratulations to everybody who's been promoted. I'd also like to actually say a special congratulations to two people who have, if you like, rejoined. So Doug Gallardo has a long-time person at HSBC, left HSBC, he's back with HSBC. So congratulations on your rejoining the profession. And Natasha Clark, who I see is in our audience, a long long-term stalwart of our industry, been out for a few years, has come back into global mobility. So welcome back to global mobility to Doug and to Natasha. It's a bit like the Hotel California of this industry, isn't it? You can check out, but you can never truly leave this wonderful, wonderful industry of ours. So there's our breaking news. I also want to mention actually the Permits Foundation, and they've got their conference on the 5th of June. I know our very own Beth Nielsen will be there. Obviously, I know Julie Onslow Cole and Siobhan Cummins, who are founder directors of the Permits Foundation, will be there, as indeed will others from Permits Foundation who we featured on our show. As Rob says, there's FEM at Dallas next week, and good luck to everybody there, and wish you all the best with the Emmas, and hopefully you will have a great conference there. So we're now going to move on. We're going to be talking about immigration, and I'm very, very excited to say that our special guest to talk about immigration today is the wonderful Charlotte Wills from Fragomen. So let's welcome Charlotte Wills to the stage. Everybody hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Let's run that walk-up video and bring Charlotte Wills on stage.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, how are you doing, Charlotte?
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on the show again.
Not at all. It's just absolutely wonderful to have you on the show. I know Julia can't be with us today, but Charlotte, you are more than a wonderful substitute. It's just great to have you on the show. And what are you going to talk to us about today?
Thank you, Brian. So today is remote work. So remote work increasingly becoming much more of an established topic. I think once maybe it was seen as like a trend from the COVID era, but actually now we are seeing that it's much more of an integral part of global mobility programs, especially the ability to work remotely internationally. And it kind of reflects the transformation that I know we talk about a lot, but the transformation we're seeing away from more traditional mobility models. And actually, I was with your other guests, Azibe and Magdalena, yesterday afternoon at an event here in London, and we had some really good discussions with a group of leaders about the importance of this topic and really how people are integrating it into their programs. So, a lot to talk about.
Cool. Well, let's go for it.
So there are kind of three key parts of this I wanted to touch on today. And the first, importantly, is why. So why are we seeing more engagement with remote work provisions? And I think there are several drivers to that. So the first is skills shortage. So employers are looking globally to find those in-demand skills with a workforce that kind of shows a preference to work remotely, probably an average of 2 days a week. And so mobility functions are increasingly having to kind of built and cater for those remote, hybrid, and physical mobility experiences without kind of showing a preference or rejection of one or the other in isolation. So this is what we're seeing in practice, and we're seeing a lot of global companies across a range of sectors introducing up to a 20 or 30-day remote work policy or guidelines equivalently. And I think Mercer covered this recently in their international remote work survey, where they showed around 78% of companies are now incorporating some kind of international remote work as a part of their operations. But we know, of course, introducing these policies is not without risk. And there's a multitude of compliance considerations: immigration, of course, tax, cybersecurity, benefits, crisis management. So I guess, do you have policies in place to address those risks? And we're really seeing the need to develop those really resilient operating models to address those risks. And leveraging technology, of course, is really important to help keep on top of those compliance risks. So that's kind of the first part. And I think the second part is the flexibility really enhances the employee experience and it improves those retention aims. So a big driver, I think, is a focus on improving employee satisfaction, and it can be a really crucial differentiator when you're out there in the market. And we see that by offering temporary international remote work options, companies can really cater for their people's individual needs and ensure productivity at the same time. And actually, I'm not sure if he's here, but one of our good friends, John Lee, he might be in the audience. He's the co-founder of Work From Anywhere platform. He talks very eloquently about this point and how it's really being used more than ever as part of a benefits offering for mobility programs, especially in places like the US, where annual leave entitlements are not always as generous as perhaps, say, here in the UK. But I guess lastly, we're also seeing really strong engagement in remote work programs from national governments too. So we've seen a wave recently of new digital nomad programs in Japan, Indonesia, Italy, Turkey, South Korea earlier in the year. And we know there are more coming. So South Africa, Peru, Thailand, New Zealand, perhaps. Julia and I attended the Global Forum for Migration Development Summit in Geneva earlier in the year, and we presented a paper on behalf of the Fragment team looking at the requirements of those schemes and how they can really benefit national priorities, but also provide transparency and compliance benefits for business. So a really rapidly developing area, really interesting, something we are helping a lot of companies to kind of tackle and proactively build strategies around. So really interesting topic.
Cool. Okay, so thank you so much, Charlotte. It's such an important subject. I mean, I suppose we thought with remote work, would it be permanent post when the pandemic came? But actually, we've moved to this hybrid world, and companies are still struggling with exactly what they mean by remote work. But it's clearly something is here to stay. So thank you very much for keeping on top of that, and we really appreciate your time here.
No problem. Thanks, Brian.
Okay, so we're going to move on now. We're now going to talk about tax, and normally we have Julie Barron with us, but I'm delighted this week that we have another very, very able substitute for our normal expert. We have Louise Nichols for her first time on the show from Vialto Partners. So we're going to bring her on stage in a moment, but everybody, hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Say a big, big thank you to Charlotte Wills, and welcome to our stage for the very first time, Louise Nichols.
Hello.
Hey, we've got Charlotte. Sorry, Charlotte. Bye. Oh dear, the joys of live TV in mobility. Louise, welcome to the show. So tell us a bit about what you're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. So I want to take just a couple of minutes to run through some of the headline themes from Vialto's recent client survey. And it's as if Charlotte and I compared notes beforehand. So what we're saying is so complementary around some of that remote work piece, and then kind of broader other types of non-traditional mobility. So our results to the survey were launched last month. We had over 450 participants and sort of really broad range of organisational size and industry groups and geography. So hopefully kind of everyone on this call would recognise their organisation within there. We called the survey Mobility Agility, and Tali, thank you for posting the link down there. What we mean by mobility agility is that new and emerging agile workforce. So not just your traditional mobility, but the remote work, hybrid work, cross-border commuters, and then from the employer-led piece, the assignments, the emerging host-based and local plus assignments and virtual assignments. I would say click on the link, have a play around. It's all on a website. It's interactive, so have a look at the stats. I was going to pick out two themes. One of them was international remote work, and we're singing from the same hymn sheet here, Charlotte. So our survey stats showed that remote work's here to stay. So we had 69% of organisations that did our survey had a formal policy or framework. But then we cut that data for larger employers, which we defined as having more than 100,000 employees, and 96% of those had a policy. Like, that's huge. And so I think for organisations that perhaps haven't, it's making that decision of should you and should you formalise this. And it's also, I guess, double from what we saw in our survey back in December 2022. So the direction of travel is definitely formalise it. Reiterating again, there's piece on drivers. I won't go into that. It's employee driven. It's employee value proposition and employee retention. But what we did see, interestingly, was we've got numbers and data backing up this theory around employers tightening up on their guardrails. So the rules that employees have to follow to be able to do this. So we saw a drop in the average number of days that policies allow, so a drop of 8.5 days. And then we also saw increases in the percentages of employers who are requiring, for example, a check on right to work, or a check on PE, check on whether you have a social security obligation. And then we've also got some really good benchmarking about restricted countries. So is that for employee safety reasons, or is it cyber security risk? We've got some data on which of those countries are mostly restricted. And then the other theme I just wanted to pick up on very quickly was virtual assignments. So 64% of organisations said they expect the volumes of virtual assignments in their organisation to increase. So that's, after short-term remote work, the fastest growing mobility type. And by virtual assignments, I mean where an employee stays in their country, but they work for the benefit of an entity within the group in another country. So the work moves to the employee rather than the traditional mobility where the employee moves to the work. And our stats showed that organisations are using this ability to work remotely to facilitate virtual assignments, which means that they can resource projects more effectively, get the right teams on the job. They can promote global connectivity within their organisation, and they can also give their employees international experience working with global teams without the employee actually having to move. So some really interesting themes to think about that. And I think if you're saying you're sitting here and thinking we don't have virtual assignments in our organisation, I challenge you on that, because I think sometimes because the person doesn't move, they go under the radar. So that was my summary. Go in and play around with the results. Anyone has any questions, get in touch, but just put out a couple of highlights.
Okay, that's amazing. It's an amazing survey. So congratulations to you. I know a lot of hard work must have gone into that survey. Congratulations to you and your colleagues at Vialto for putting that together. And it is available to download. It's free of charge. It sounds like it's a fascinating subject, mobility, agility. So there we have it, a great survey from Vialto Partners. We're now going to be talking about global mobility at Equinix, and in particular, we're going to be talking about the link with talent mobility and making the dream a reality. And there is some really exciting stuff that's been going on at Equinix. I'm super excited that we've got Azibi and Magdalena from Equinix, who are backstage. You're going to be joining us in a second. So we're just going to run that video. But before we do, everybody, you know how it works. Hit the heart button, hit the like button, hit the applause button. Let's say thank you to Louise Nichols and her colleagues at Vialto Partners, and welcome to the stage Azibi Agomo and Magdalena Jennings from Equinix.
Hey, Brian.
You both, great to see you. So, Azibi, Magdalena, welcome to the show. Now, I'm sure there's going to be lots of comments coming in, lots of questions, but before we get into that, maybe you could just introduce yourselves. Maybe, Azibi, if you could just kick off, tell us a bit about Equinix and a bit about yourself and your route into the industry.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian. First of all, thanks for having us on. And hi, everyone. My name is Izibe. I'm the head of global mobility at Equinix. I've been here for 5 years now. Equinix is the world's digital infrastructure company. Our background has been in interconnecting the internet, all the major players that essentially make the internet what you know it is. We help to interconnect the lot. And without us, we probably wouldn't be able to have this little conversation right now. So really pleased to be here. My route into mobility, I started as an immigration solicitor, and then someone headhunted me into mobility a very long time ago and locked the doors and threw away the key. And it's been a fun ride since then.
And Magdalena, tell us a bit about yourself and your role at Equinix.
Thank you so much for having me today. Real pleasure. So I'm the EMEA Global Mobility Business Partner at Equinix and work together with Azibe. I joined Equinix, a year and a half ago now, coming up to 2 years, which is fantastic. And I came into mobility from a compliance background. So I started my career as a tax accountant, and I swiftly moved into an in-house role where I have been in a number of various roles over the last 15 plus years. I've always had passion about talent mobility, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to develop this further and that thinking at Equinix in my current role.
Cool. And tell us a bit about the size of the program, the type of things you do, the sort of the moves. Just give me a feel for the program.
Yeah, absolutely. So at mobility at Equinix, everything that moves across the border is ours. So we're talking about acquiring talent. So we're working with.
There's your team.
Oh yeah. So that was that was when we all got together in London, and I hosted, and it was really great to have everybody there. Yeah, totally. Cool. Okay, so we touch every aspect. So when it comes to traditional moves, we don't see too much of those now. We're talking about, really just intense in terms of all traditional moves. When it comes to permanent moves, you're talking more like the 60s, 70s. When it comes to remote work, you start picking up numbers. You're talking 200, 250 plus of those. When it comes to international new hires, then we're talking quite significant numbers on those. Currently, our immigration population it fluctuates. It's between 500 and 1,000 in that population. But that's by far the biggest engagement now, is working with talent and bringing new talent in and distributing that talent across the company. And obviously, we have new strands coming up as well when it comes to the developmental programs, which we're talking about today.
Well, that is so exciting. So let's just talk about it, because obviously the theme of today is all about talent mobility. I mean, what does that mean to you? What is talent mobility in Equinix language?
I'll let Magdalena take the first shot at that one.
So talent mobility at Equinix is a really good question, and it's essentially global mobility enabling talent mobility across the organization. So we work very closely and strategically, as Zilu was saying earlier, we do position our team in terms of the purpose of the team as supporting talent through acquiring, developing, deploying, and retaining that talent across Equinix. So there's a real synergy, a real link between talent and global mobility, and it's at the core of what we do.
Okay, yeah, so the idea is to integrate mobility and talent. I mean, tell us a bit about that. I mean, how do you integrate mobility and talent?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So I would say, looking at the journey we've been on at Equinix, when I joined, we had mobility sitting under operations. Right? And then we had a real conversation about what's the real purpose, how can we add the most value, and all of that. And as part of that conversation and that exploration, we found ourselves then sitting within the talent team, and we became the talent management and mobility team. And then we started building and co-building together. So how do you do it? First of all, you really start thinking and having conversations about how can we add the most value? What's the totality of our skill sets? What's the direction of the business? And how can we plug into that? I will add that, in the last year or so, after external benchmarking, we were placed under the Total Rewards organization. But even in doing that, as part of a broader org, restructure, even in doing that, there was a clear conversation with all the leaders and everyone aligned that even though we are structured under reward, we're expected to play closely with talent and add the value that we're expected to add there, which is, I think, incredibly important to show everyone listening that wherever you're reporting into, that doesn't restrict you from forging that close link with talent and adding the maximum value that you can.
Yeah. And a comment's come in, I think it was tongue in cheek from Richard. He says, at what point does an employee become talent? But I mean, just taking that, I'm assuming that in Equinix, everybody is talent. But do you then split that into high performance or high potential? Or, I mean, how do you subcategorize talent in any way?
Okay, I'll kick it off, and Magdalena, please feel free to jump in. It is actually a very topical question, and something we're actively exploring together with the talent function. Because yes, everyone is talent, but there are different types of talent, right? Without going into technical names, you can have the kind of talent that's there to help you transform your company. You can have the type of talent that is rock solid and there to help you do what you've always been doing. And you also have the type of talent that's new and just looking around and trying to figure out, is this the place for me? What do I do? And the sort of programs you would have for this different talent, the sort of investment you have for these different categories of talent will be very different. But you need to know who they are, identify them. At what point does an employee become talent? At the point that you decide you want them to join your company, Richard. That's the point at which they become talent, because you want them. Magdalena, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I would fully agree, and I think back to Brian's question in terms of integrating talent. I think this is the main topic of conversation now, mapping out that talent and becoming even more robust into that synergy and ability to connect global mobility and talent mobility. And in terms of how you make it happen, just wanted to really just share it. I think it's literally just one conversation at a time. You have to build that broader coalition. You have to embed yourself as a function that drives talent development. However you define talent into your organization could be very, very many different things depending on business objectives and the type of business you are. But I think at the core is you really want to build that broader coalition, and you want to position global mobility as a key partner in developing talent to your organization.
Okay, one question, I'd like to ask the audience this question is, I run a poll on it during the week, but I'm just going to see what the audience says. And this is a structural question. How close should the link be between the talent and mobility functions? And I gave 3 alternatives. There should be direct line reporting between mobility and talent. There should be a dotted line reporting. So in other words, in that scenario, mobility reports into, say, I don't know, reward or comp and bends or something with a dotted line of talent, or they should be completely separate. So in the audience, let us know, where do you think mobility should sit as regards talent? Should it have a direct line into talent, a dotted line into talent, or should it be completely separate? And Azibi, Magdalena, I know there's been a journey there that you guys have been on. Maybe you can tell us a bit about your journey and just general thoughts of the pros and cons of each approach.
Absolutely, yes. So again, as I said, we started off in ops, as part of ops. And then after conversations we were moved into talent and as part of the talent management and mobility team. And now we sit in rewards, and I sit as part of the total rewards leadership team, but with full support from my leadership to engage with talent. Pros and cons. So the pros of sitting in talent is that people understand straight off, or not necessarily, are more likely to understand straight off that you're not just operational. A mistake that is easier to make when you sit in rewards. Pros of sitting in rewards is it obviously strengthens the synergies that are more the benefits and reward side of mobility. But the greatest thing from my perspective, it's not really whether you're reporting into one or the other. It's down to the individual leadership and the company leadership and the understanding of what mobility is and what it does, because that can be enabled, whether it's a direct line or a dotted line. Again, I'll hand over to Magdalena to fill in my inevitable gaps.
I fully agree, and I think just from a kind of taking a step back from this conversation, ultimately it does depend on whether you have that support from senior leadership, because mobility is one of those functions that brings in and pulls in together so many different functions that you can happily live, you know, and be aligned to a particular part of the business, just depending on entirely on the type of business that you operate within. I think if we were reporting into talent, as an example, we'd still have that very strong link with total rewards, because at the end of the day, some of the things that we deliver are benefits. As an example, remote working, as you were saying earlier, this is absolutely kind of a benefit that needs to be pulled out and presented as a part of our employer value proposition, as an example. So there's always synergies, there are always overlapping remits, and we can very comfortably sit in different parts of the organization. I think this is the beauty of mobility. It kind of depends on the business you are, then you drive those synergies. But I think that link with talent always has to remain to kind of really safeguard where you are.
Okay, when we did the poll, the results we got, just to share them with you guys and with the audience, is it was pretty evenly split between a direct line and a dotted line. It was 43 plays 45 between a direct line and a dotted line. And only 13% said that there should be a complete separation. So there is a view, you know, nearly 90% felt there should be either a direct line or a dotted line. I mean, one of the things I suppose that's important is the relatively size of the function. I mean, talent is a much, much bigger function in most organizations than the mobility. I wonder, Zebi, if you could just tell us a bit about, you know, from your experience, what is the relative size of the two functions?
So when I first joined, the size of mobility was about, what were we, 3, and talent was maybe 4 or 5. Well, now the size of mobility is 8, and talent is about 1 billion.
$1 billion. It's massive.
I can't count.
Yeah.
No, I mean, okay.
And why is talent so big? What's contained within talent?
So you see, Equinix is very much a people-centered company, right? Very much a people-centered company. We care a lot about people. And there's been a continuous development of our strategy for helping our people to be the best they can be, acquiring the best talent, re-examining how we develop that talent. And so the company has been growing, and so the team has been growing that would acquire, that would develop that. Right now, we say, what's encompassed in talent? Well, hey, we're in the middle of transformation, and we have this massive platform where you've got talent management on the one side, and then you've got integrated talent, which is looking at acquisition as well as development, as in inward mobility, internal mobility of existing talent, right? So there's a holistic look there, succession planning, etc., as well as bringing people in, as well as building up skills. So it's a massive organization.
Cool. I mean, that's so exciting. And you guys have really pioneered this concept of an integrated talent team. Can you just tell us a bit about what you mean by an integrated talent team?
You want to take a first stab, Magdalena?
Sure. I mean, from an integrated talent team point of view, we're really looking at the collaborative side of what talent mobility and global mobility can do, the synergies, the collaboration that can exist there. And we really want to pull this out as an added benefit. And this is very much linked to elevating global mobility, lifting it out from the day-to-day visa immigration activities that, I mean, let's be honest, can be a full-time job. So it's developing, kind of creating that space to be part of that integrated talent solution. Integrated talent is really all the things that Ezeeba described earlier that enables talent development at Equinix. And as Ezeeba was saying, we're very much of an employee-centered organization, and you know, a slogan that we all live by and guided by is I'm safe, I belong, I matter. And I think in this context, talent is a kind of a natural progression. It's what helps us be the business we are.
Okay, and we've talked a bit about this integration. One of the things I think you were saying earlier that resonated with me is you said mobility is not just about visas and tax. It should be a lot more. And one of the ways of elevating mobility and, you know, not being stuck in the visa and tax operational corner is to make it more strategic. What does that mean in practice at Equinix? I mean, how do you elevate mobility so it's not just about visas and tax? Ezeeba, do you want to come in on that one?
Yes, of course. I mean, so the very first thing that we did at Equinix was to look at the structure of our team. And we created a structure whereby in each region we have a mobility business partner that can engage in conversations with the business, understand what the business needs, convey solutions to that, get in the conversation about how can we add value to this before, you know, we start running off to do things, right? And then we also have a compliance and enablement team that's working on the employee experience, that is executing on our infrastructure, because practically we found when we tried previously to have a consultative team that had compliance as well as that business engagement, compliance, and I say this a lot, those who've heard me speak a few times hear me say this a lot, compliance sucks the life out of everything else. Once you look at that, you can't do anything else, right? And frankly, you've got to get that right. If you fail with compliance, nobody's going to care about anything else you have to say, right? But if you want to start making a difference, if you want to start making it the function all that it can be, add the maximum value to your company that you can, then the way we did that was to carve out the mobility business partner roles so that we could, and then it's not about having it, I dread to say it, seat at the table just to have that. It's about what you do with it. Do you truly understand the business? Are you truly demonstrating the solutions to that, getting in with the conversations? And then can you deliver products to the business that they can see, my gosh, yes, this adds value. This develops our people. This takes us further towards our company goal. Not your goal, not about mobility, about the company, right? That's critical. But first, you need to have the talent in place to do it. And then you need to start working on your stakeholders, understand who they are, work on
I just saw Doug's comment there, and a big shout out to Doug. He says, "Preach. Try working for a bank. Compliance is 90% of my day." My God, that must be something that people resonate with. But you know, but to take, and this is what is so exciting about what you guys are doing, is that 95% of the day is educating. But actually, if you just step back and you go back to first principles, and this is, I know, again, something we discussed earlier in our green room, is why are we moving people? What are we trying to achieve, as opposed to just how do we do it and when do we do it. So, so it's less about the what and the how and more about the why. So maybe Magdalena, tell us a bit about that from an Equinix perspective. How do you get into that conversation about why are we moving people and what are we trying to achieve?
Of course. So I think this is very much part of this kind of elevating mobility, pulling away from kind of visa compliance, but also pulling away from that traditional view that mobility is really expensive. I mean, traditionally it has been, but there are so many different options to actually support the talent agenda of the organization. And once removing that core compliance, which of course is non-negotiable, operational excellence has to be there from a mobility point of view. But in terms of kind of elevating the conversation and the why as to why we're doing this at the end of the day, why are we generating the cost, why are we doing the compliance day in, day out, is because we are supporting our employees, our talent, the people who are delivering on our business objectives. And for it to be, I suppose, more strategically focused, we need to have those conversations and we need to pull out the need for mobility to be strategic. Because of the expense that's traditionally and the cost that's traditionally allocated to mobility, I think it's really important to start viewing this as an investment, as a talent investment, so that you have a deeper purpose to how mobility operates and how we support the organization in moving talent cross-border.
Okay, and a few comments that have come in. A comment here from, I'm not sure who it is from actually. We can use it here. Trying to establish a collaborative approach between talent and GM and ensure the talent group knows how global mobility can add value. So, I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, how do you actually ensure that your colleagues in talent know what you can do and how you can add value? How do you have that conversation? Especially if you work remotely and you're not necessarily in the same building.
I'll probably go back. Yeah, sorry, Ziva, go ahead, please.
No. Okay, I mean, so the first thing we did was we created a charter, a global mobility charter. And basically, this is a document that says who we are, what we do, why we do it. We shared this with the Vice President of Talent Management at the time. This is how we see ourselves, right? Do you see us this way? When we have new leadership come in, rinse and repeat. This is how we see ourselves. Do you see us this way? Let's talk. This is how we fit into the employee value proposition, right? So that's starting from the top. With every new leadership, be very clear about this is how we believe we can add value. This is how we've done it in the past. What do you see? What's your vision? Do we align on this and try and get to a meeting point? Because without, again, that leadership support, you're going nowhere. And then elevator conversations, every other opportunity. Magdalena, I know you'd have more to add on that as well.
Okay, and another comment that's come in here. Sorry, we'll take that comment in a second. We'll take Michelle's comment in a second. So Magdalena, you come in here.
Oh, I just wanted to add that it's back to that having one conversation at a time, and just making sure that as ever the team charter, the mobility charter, our purpose is aligned to business objectives. And I think it's really important with a change in leadership to have that conversation again, just to make sure that as a function, we are positioned in the best possible way to support talent. So it's not a single-minded kind of quest to be seen as a talent function. It's how we actually deliver value to the business under the umbrella of talent mobility, and how we then gauge this and create the right products to support that mobility.
Okay, and I don't think anyone's going to disagree with Michelle's point, but let's put it up here. Agreed. Ensure it's known that GM is not just a service or a function, but an integral part of attaining experience and skills. And I'd like to actually get into that, because I know you've been doing pilots, and when I was chatting to you earlier, you were saying that there's sort of, if you like, the history of what you've done, there's the current, and there's the future. So tell us a bit about some of these really very exciting pilots that you guys have been doing at Equinix. Azibi, do you want to sort of kick off on that one?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, we started off, and this again is a testament to that one conversation at a time, taking in a time, waiting for the moments when what you're trying to do aligns with what works for the business. So, back in 2020, we worked with a talent management organization on a range of developmental mobility programs. And we started talking to the business about this at that time. But then COVID came in, great resignation, a couple of things sort of derailed that. But we had sown the seeds in the business about what was possible. And those seeds took root, right? Even throughout this period of silence, the seeds took root because what happened was independently, the business came back to us and said, we've been thinking about rotational assignments, right? And is there something we can do with this? And so, again, collaboratively, Global Mobility Talent Management sat down, worked together on a plan. And again, the plan had to be realistic. This is where we had to think about, is this something that's going to be big, bold, centrally funded? Or is this something that we're going to go to the business and say, hey, we have some tools you can use. If you want this, you can fund this, individual business units, and we can make this work. Then we can use that as a testimonial and move on and build something bigger. The latter was the approach we used. We built a rotational assignment toolkit, ran some pilots on that last year, and Magdalena was front and center of that. So I don't want to steal your thunder. I'll give you a couple of minutes on that because I know that you really did some fantastic work with that last year.
So I suppose, thank you. I suppose it is the proof of concept. I think it's starting small and building up to bigger things. So you don't have to start with a huge program to prove the value add of rotational programs. And I think this is really important because the pilots we ran last year, I suppose the size is modest, but what we really focused on was what is the business value add? How can we demonstrate that objectives are being met and that investment that is required is money well spent at the end of the day. And when I speak of investment, I just wanted to highlight this because I know it's a top question that I get asked is, well, was it a lot of money you spent? And the answer is no. And I will describe in a second kind of the structure we have behind the rotational programs. But I think the key thing in terms of if anyone is looking to develop that concept and start that conversation to their organization is to make sure that they have a key stakeholder engagement. So either functional VP level or HRBP partners. So people who are responsible to allocate budget to rotational programs. You have to have their buy-in and for them to kind of push that product and promote it, if you like, across the function. But the rotational programs that we had piloted last year. So first of all, what is a rotational program? So a structured initiative in a nutshell, where employees are given opportunities to work in a different role, teams and locations for a set period of time. And the way we've done is that we've created different tiers. So it can range from 1 week up to 12 months, which then moves into more of a traditional short-term assignment. And our pilots were focusing on a very brief planned exposure. And our first program was 1 week duration, but it was very targeted in terms of it was an exchange of ideas. People were expected to solve on a spot when they met. It was very much around building networks and continuing with what they've earned throughout that exposure when they went back to their home location. So there's a lasting long-term effect. And it's also about creating that broader perspective of organization, retention as well. There is a piece around kind of really preparing that kind of almost like a succession planning and talent development long-term, kind of opening their eyes out to the art of the possible. And I think this is how you develop talent. And I think from a kind of a rotational program point of view, again, we tapped into some of the virtual type of assignments as well, and they proved very successful. So we didn't have any mobility, kind of physical cross-border mobility, but as one of our guest speakers was saying earlier, the virtual assignments, there is a proof of concept. They work and they develop talent. So it's again another way to develop rotational programs. So perhaps coupling in a short exposure, if budget permitting, with a ongoing virtual assignment to develop that capability. So as Aziba was saying, we now have a toolkit, a product, that we really want to promote. But kind of the funny thing is that people are hearing kind of word of mouth. So we've had probably about 4 or 5 different approaches from different functions across the business who have heard about the success of the pilots last year. And you can just see people's eyes kind of lighting up. They really want to be part of this kind of rotational program revolution. They want to
Don't
do
leave
the
us
same
out,
thing.
please. Can we have some of that?
Exactly.
But let me ask, I mean, a rotational program sounds expensive. How do you get the line to buy into the cost of running a rotational program?
It's the value add. It's the value add we're able to demonstrate to the business, and is that key stakeholder engagement.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, Brian, you have to start small. You have to understand your business, understand your stakeholders. What's driving them then, align with that. So when we had, for example, the driver being build an enterprise mindset, get people to see more of what other people are doing and all that, you focus on that. Right now, we're having even more fundamental conversations, right, with our key collaborators in talent about how can we use these programs to drive diversity and build a pipeline of leaders that are ready to compete for the next level, right? We're having those sort of conversations around that and building around that. And when you start getting to that level, it's now like, okay, how can we then use this and with our broader focus on safe, belong, I matter, to start influencing the possibility of centralized budgets to deal with this, or centralized mandates, right? Sometimes it's about waiting for the right moment, planting those seeds, waiting for the right moment to take it forward, not being preachy about it, not being like, we know what's best, what's wrong, why haven't you? But hey, this adds value. And we fundamentally believe this. It's just for the good of the company. It makes it a better company. It makes it better for existing talent, makes it more attractive to new talent. This adds value. It's just about making that seen and placing yourself in the right conversations to be heard.
Okay, so there's a comment that's coming from Carol. It's quite a long comment, but let's just take that and it's in your comments on it. She says, now that you've explicitly verbalized talent and global mobility, it seems so obvious. However, it is also a good reminder that we often need to step back, go back to the basics, explain, gain support, and build relationships, because siloing is real and it's easy for anyone to fall back into only what is in one's own immediate view. So maybe sort of deconstructing that, how do we get out of our silos and take that step back that, you know, Carol has talked about so eloquently?
Yeah,
Magdalena,
okay.
want to take that, or Izibi?
After you, Aziba.
Okay, so how do you step back? Well, the way we did it, like I said, was first of all to look at our team structure and understand whether it's supported taking this approach. That was the first thing, right? To be honest, even before then, I stepped back by attending external programs and functions and getting out of my own head. What are other people doing? Talking with others, have a little bit of a brain reset, right? You know, talk outside, talk and talk. I had a great conversation with, you know, someone who was running a great talent mobility program elsewhere. I was like, what's working? What's not working? How long have you been doing this for? Right? I understand, yes, it's specific to your organization and your needs. And that's true all the time, but what can I get from there? So networking, sharing ideas is critical. Now, you can't ape other ideas. Now look at your company. What's the reality here? Right? What can we do here? And for us, we're like, okay, this structure doesn't work. If we're going to try this, it doesn't work. We have to change the structure. Hence, we have the global mobility business partners. I had one of our HR business partners the other day say to me when we were at a conference, she was like, I am so glad you changed that structure. Right? That the engagement we have after that, right? It's so much better. So how do we get out of the silos? Make time to get out of your immediate circle. Then make time to think about whether you're structurally in a position to do more than running the hamster wheel.
Okay, right. So we've only got a couple of minutes left. I just want to ask one last question. Is they say if you can't measure it, it didn't happen. So tell us a little bit about analytics. In terms of your rotational program or some of the other programs, I mean, do you measure things like who applied, what the objectives were, what was the value added? I mean, do you get into that sort of stuff? And how do you actually measure and monitor what's going on?
Go for it, Magdalena.
We do, and it's an integral part of how we create it, how we designed the rotational program. So the data analytics, we always knew we really wanted. We had some key objectives from a diversity, equality and inclusion, gender equality as well. So we have key parameters, key metrics that we wanted to measure as part of this in terms of the applicant pool. And it was really important for us to be very clear and design an application process as well, so that we can get that buy-in. So it wasn't open just to everyone. We had a very specific criteria in terms of who was part of the rotational program. So there's some real best practices there that we can very happily share if anyone wants to get in touch. But more in terms of the data analytics, I think it's absolutely critical that you link up with your data analytics teams, and that you explicitly kind of define the parameters and then use it to solidify that pilot and get buy-in for subsequent cohorts, or even turn it into a BAU product. And I think as part of the data analytics, some of the key data we received was through surveys. We surveyed the applicants, we surveyed the participants, the hosts, and that data gave us the confidence that this program really works. And I have to say we've been very successful, and we have now actually adopted this as a BAU product. So it's been hugely successful.
Okay, so in our last 3 minutes, Azibi, what lessons would you sort of suggest to anybody else looking to go down the same route? Give us the sort of the 90-second tips for others.
You know me, Brian, and you're telling me to speak in 90 seconds, so am I. So I would say
I'm pretty strict on timing.
I would say, first of all, you need to understand your business. That's critical. You need to be a team player. Who are your critical stakeholders? Try to get the 1, the 2, the 3 to understand. Then build your coalition. You cannot accomplish any great change without a strong coalition. It won't work. And then once you've built your core coalition, understand who your approvers, who's going to have to sign off and start working on them, and get allies to work with them. Right. So that's the key thing. Sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. There's no need trying to rushing with a sledgehammer if it doesn't work at that point in time and it's not aligned with the current priorities of the company. Take your time. Help your stakeholders understand why this is so critical. And it's more than likely going to come to you because folks see, wait a minute, this makes sense.
Okay, so it's about communications, it's about sort of explaining it. And I know you said earlier about rinse and repeat. And Magdalena, do you want to just give you the final word? How do you keep re-emphasizing the message?
Again, it's one conversation at a time, and I truly believe this. I think in terms of delivering that message, it's about elevating the program and creating and building that brand, and it's a continuous work. And I'm a strong believer that it doesn't happen naturally. It's not necessarily an organic process. You have to really put the effort and energy behind it, but it really pays off, and it kind of helps you be at that strategic level where all mobility professionals want to operate, really.
Okay, and I think to finish up, let's just bring back that quote that Jeremy Chandler shared. Fantastic quote there. So we'll just bring that back on screen. In a second, I seem to have, here we go, from Larry Bosty at GE. I'm convinced that nothing we do is more important than hiring and developing people. At the end of the day, you bet on people, not on strategies. So let's just leave that up there, because I think that sums it up very nicely. I'm going to bring onto stage our earlier guests. So we've got Charlotte Wills, we've got Louise Nichols, we've got our wonderful producer, Tally Gorin. I'm Brian Friedman. It's been The View from the Top. It's been a most interesting and fascinating discussion. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as we have enjoyed putting it together. We are back again this time next week when we're going to be talking about return on investment in global mobility. Our hour is up, so all that really remains is for us to say goodbye to our wonderful audience. Have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you again this time next week as we talk about return on investment. Take care, everybody, and have a great, great week.